Well, hello and welcome all you wonderful people out there in YouTube land to the Texas Special YouTube channel. And in this second and final HO scale locomotive review for March of 2026, we are taking a look at this lifelike Southern Pacific EMD SD35. Now, this is an older model. This is a 90s to early 2000s model locomotive, but it's still a pretty darn good engine. It's a very nice runner. It will try to pull this house off its foundation if I let it. It pulls consist behind it with no problem, no matter how large of a train I throw behind it. And in general, it looks great. It's a little bit noisy. It's not near as quiet as, the last locomotive we reviewed, that IHC Mikado, but it definitely gets the job done, and it handles these 18-inch radius curves on the Stars Hollow Railroad with no problem. As I mentioned, this thing is DCC decoder equipped. It has a Digitrax DCC decoder in it. I cannot remember for the life of me what particular variety, but it's good to go. You have lots of nice cast-on detailing all along the long hood. You have these cast-on grills. You have the cast-on grill here. Here on the conductor side of the engine, you have the turbocharger housing. Sunshade on this side. The 2967 matches the 2967 on the number boards and on the other side of the cab. Of course, all the requisite hatches and whatnot. The trucks on this thing are very nicely done for a 90s to early 2000s model locomotive. All the requisite brake pistons, and you even have some of the air brake lines running to the pistons, as you can see clearly here. The shell of the engine is held on by two little tabs, one here and one on the opposite side in the exact same spot. The lettering and numbering on this thing are all nicely done. It's a nice, clean and crisp separation between the gray of the locomotive body and the white of the numbering and lettering. And you have a relatively nice, could be a little bit better done, especially along the top of the nose, but between the bloody nose, the bloody red nose, and the striping on the side of the nose and the gray of the locomotive body. Along the front of this locomotive, on the front of this locomotive, you get a decent shot of the 3-chime air horn. You have the headlights, cast on marker lights, of course the SP here centered prominently on the low hood of the nose of the engine. You have the little storage compartments, cast on grab irons in the appropriate spot, one-piece railings with modular. The previous owner had painted the ends of the hand railings in a contrasting color in compliance with FRA requirements, prototypically speaking. This engine originally came with horn hook couplers when new from the factory. As you can see, they've been replaced with KDs, operating magnetic KDs. The pilot has a cast-on coupler cut pin and a little grab iron here. And of course you have the anti-climber right here. And the safety chain is cast on as part of the one-piece hand railing there on the end. The walkways are smooth. There is no safety tread on this engine. Here on the rear of the locomotive, again, you have a one-piece hand railing here on the end of the pilot. You have the cast-on grab iron here, the cast-on coupler cut lever, the modular installed KD, which the trip pin on this one hung too low and I just clipped it off. You have the cast-on grab irons all the way up to the top on the conductor side of the long hood, And you have the cast on grab iron here. Again, non-operational cast on marker lights. The little storage compartments on the bottom of the long hood. And you have these operating number boards and headlight. The one thing I've noticed that it's not really an irritant to me, but it's out of place. Instead of a curved handrail across the back of this cooling fan here, you have just one cast on grab iron there. Looking at the roof of the locomotive, you have the correct cooling fan arrangement for a 35 type engine. So if a GP35 would have the same arrangement. You have the dynamic brake cooling fans, you have the exhaust stack, obviously non-operational, and you have this cover over the turbocharger housing. You have nice rivet detailing all the way throughout on each panel, and you also have cast on lift rings in the appropriate spots all throughout the model. And even though they're cast on and not separately applied actual rings, they still give a convincing effect. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this locomotive is DCC decoder equipped. It is equipped with a dual mode Digitrax decoder. Again, I can't remember the specific variety, but it is a dual mode Digitrax DCC decoder. So, if you're new to the hobby or you're unfamiliar with DCC, what that dual mode means is that unless you program it to do otherwise, a locomotive with a dual mode DCC decoder will operate on DC power, straight DC power with a train set transformer. You do not have finite control of lighting or sound features. If so equipped, this is not. But you can at least make the thing go forwards and backwards like a regular DC engine. So I'm going to demonstrate to y'all with the MRC Rail Power 1370 that's on the Stars Hollow Railroad how smooth this thing runs on DC. So to get this thing moving, I need to crank it up to about 33% throttle. That is about 33% throttle on the MRC Rail Power 1370. And the reason I have to crank it to about 33% is those first few volts are being sucked up by the DCC decoder. Everything that the DCC decoder does not need starts funneling to the motor itself. So I have the Digitrax Zephyr hooked up to the railroad, and we're going to run this thing in DCC mode. Again, not sound equipped, just regular old-fashioned DCC. I want you to count the cars as they slowly roll by. Now, granted, this first car is a track cleaning car with a friction pad underneath rubbing against the track, so that really counts for anywhere between 2 to 5 cars. So start off with 2 to 5 cars, or 3 to 5 cars equivalent for the track cleaning car, and then start counting how many cars this thing is pulling. Now, while it's not a super long, super impressive train for a model railroad with wide curvature and perfectly tabletop flat, keep in mind this is a model railroad that was intentionally built uneven, with a grade, and also with tight curvature. That's about 20% input on the throttle for the Zephyr, by the way, to get it moving.